Picture this. You've been planning your engagement party for 3 months, sent out invitations to everyone you care about, booked the perfect venue, and even had your speech memorized. Then 48 hours before the big day, your girlfriend, Euphorious, tells you she can't make it because she's going to her friend Marcus's bachelor party in Miami instead. Not just any friend, the guy she met at a coffee shop 6 weeks ago and somehow became inseparable with overnight. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. So that's exactly what happened to me last Saturday, and what followed changed everything I thought I knew about love, loyalty, and what I actually deserved in a relationship. My name is Tyler, and for the past 4 years, I thought I had found my person in Jessica. We met during our sophomore year at Northwestern University, where she was studying marketing and I was grinding through my engineering program. What started as study sessions in the library turned into late-night conversations about our dreams, weekend road trips to random small towns, and eventually moving in together after graduation. Jessica had this infectious energy that could light up any room. She was the type of person who remembered everyone's birthday, organized surprise parties for friends, and somehow convinced our entire friend group to dress up as superheroes for Halloween 3 years running. When I pictured my future, she was always right there beside me, laughing at my terrible jokes and pushing me to be more spontaneous. Our relationship had its rhythm. I was the planner, the one who researched restaurants before date nights and made sure we had tickets to concerts months in advance. Jessica was the adventure, the one who would suggest we drive 4 hours to see a sunrise over Lake Michigan, or decide we needed to learn salsa dancing on a random Tuesday. We balanced each other perfectly, or so I believed. The engagement itself happened last New Year's Eve. We were at her parents' house in Naperville. I had the ring hidden in my jacket pocket for 3 weeks, waiting for the perfect moment. As the countdown began and fireworks started lighting up the sky outside, I dropped to one knee right there in their living room. Her mom cried. Her dad shook my hand with tears in his eyes. And Jessica said yes while jumping up and down like she'd just won the lottery. Planning the engagement party became our shared project over the next few months. We chose the Riverside Gardens venue because it was where we had our first official date. A beautiful outdoor space with string lights and a view of the Chicago River. Jessica insisted on handling the decorations while I managed the catering and logistics. We spent countless evenings at our kitchen table, surrounded by invitation samples and menu options, debating whether to serve past appetizers or a buffet dinner. Everything was perfect until Marcus entered the picture 6 weeks ago. Jessica met him at Grind Coffee, the place she went every morning before work. She came home that first day talking about this charming guy from Texas who was new to Chicago. And looking for friends? Marcus worked in tech sales, had just moved here for a job opportunity, and apparently had the most fascinating stories about his travels through South America. Within a week, Jessica was texting him regularly, suggesting he join our weekend plans, and mentioning his name in almost every conversation. At first, I was genuinely happy for her. Jessica had always been social, and since most of our college friends had scattered across the country after graduation, she'd been feeling isolated. Having a new friend seemed like exactly what she needed. Marcus seemed harmless enough when I met him, tall, athletic build. One of those guys who could make anyone laugh within 5 minutes of meeting him. He had this easy confidence that made you want to be around him, and I could understand why Jessica enjoyed his company. But somewhere between week 2 and week 3, their friendship shifted into something that made me increasingly uncomfortable. Jessica started checking her phone constantly, smiling at messages during our dinner dates, and stepping away to take calls from him. She began suggesting we invite Marcus to things that used to be just for us, our Sunday morning farmers market trips, our monthly wine tasting adventures, even our quiet movie nights at home. When I gently mentioned that maybe they were spending a lot of time together, Jessica laughed it off. She told me I was being silly, that Marcus was just a good friend who was lonely in a new city, and that I was reading too much into their connection. She reminded me that I had plenty of female friends, and she'd never made me feel guilty about those relationships. The real turning point came 3 weeks ago when Marcus announced he was getting married to his long-distance girlfriend, Sarah. who was flying in from Austin for a quick courthouse ceremony followed by a bachelor party weekend in Miami. Apparently, they'd been together for 2 years, but kept it long distance while he figured out his career situation. Now that he'd landed the Chicago job, they were making it official with a small ceremony and then planning a bigger celebration in Texas later. Jessica was thrilled for him, immediately volunteering to help plan the bachelor party and talking about how romantic it was that they were finally able to be together. She spent hours researching Miami hotels, suggesting activities, coordinating with Marcus's other friends who were flying in from various cities. Her enthusiasm for his happiness seemed genuine and sweet, which is why I didn't think much of it when she mentioned she might attend some of the bachelor party events. Then came last Wednesday evening, exactly 5 days before our engagement party. We were sitting on our couch, going over the final guest count and seating arrangements, when Jessica's phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. She read it, frowned slightly, and then looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before, like she was about to deliver news she knew would hurt. "Tyler, I need to talk to you about something," she said, setting down the invitation list. We'd been reviewing. Marcus's bachelor party got moved to this weekend because Sarah's work schedule changed. The only time everyone can make it to Miami is Friday through Sunday. I felt my stomach drop, but I tried to stay calm. "Okay, that's unfortunate timing, but I'm sure he'll understand that you can't make it because of our engagement party." Jessica was quiet for a long moment, picking at the edge of our throw pillow. "The thing is, Tyler, Marcus really wants me there. He said I've become such an important friend to him during this transition to Chicago, and since Sarah doesn't know anyone else who's going, he was hoping I could be there to help her feel comfortable with his friend group." "Jessica, our engagement party is Saturday. We've had this planned for 3 months. Everyone we care about is coming." "I know, and I feel terrible about the timing, but this is Marcus's only bachelor party. We can always have another engagement party later, or even just do something smaller with our families. But this is a once-in-a-lifetime thing for him." I stared at her, trying to process what she was actually saying. "Are you seriously suggesting you skip our engagement party to go to Miami with a guy you've known for 6 weeks? Don't make it sound like that, Tyler. This isn't about choosing him over you. It's about being a good friend when someone needs support. Marcus has been there for me during some really stressful times at work, and I want to be there for him too." "What stressful times? You never mentioned Marcus helping you with work stuff?" Jessica's cheeks flushed slightly. "Not everything has to be a big dramatic story, Tyler. Sometimes friends just listen and offer advice. The point is, he's been a good friend to me, and I want to be a good friend to him." I felt like the ground was shifting beneath me. "Jessica, this is our engagement party. This is supposed to be the celebration of us deciding to spend our lives together. How can you even consider not being there?" "You're being dramatic," she said, but her voice lacked its usual confidence. "It's just a party, Tyler. The important thing is that we're engaged, not whether we have a big celebration about it." "Just a party? We've been planning this for months. Your parents are driving in from Naperville. My brother is flying in from Portland. You have 60 people coming to celebrate us, and you want to go to Miami instead?" Jessica stood up and started pacing around our living room. "I didn't plan for this to happen, Tyler. The timing just worked out badly. But Marcus is getting married, and this is his last weekend as a single guy. Specifically asked me to be there because I'm one of his closest friends in Chicago now." "Closest friends? You've known him for 6 weeks? Friendship isn't about duration, Tyler. It's about connection." Marcus and I just click in a way that feels really natural and easy. I don't have to explain myself or worry about saying that wrong thing. We just get each other. Those words hit me like a physical blow. "And you don't feel that way with me?" "That's not what I said. It's what you implied." Jessica stopped pacing and looked at me with frustration. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "Tyler, you're twisting my words. I love you, and I want to marry you, but that doesn't mean I can't have other important friendships. Marcus is going through a major life transition, and I want to support him. Why can't you understand that?" "Because," I said, my voice getting louder despite my efforts to stay calm, "normal people don't skip their own engagement party to go to a bachelor party for someone they barely know, because normal people prioritize their actual relationship over a friendship that's barely 6 weeks old, because this feels completely insane to me, and the fact that you don't see that is making me question everything. Question everything, Tyler? That's incredibly dramatic. I'm talking about missing one party, not calling off our engagement. Are you? Because from where I'm sitting, it feels like you're choosing Marcus over me, over us, over our future together. And if you can make that choice this easily, then maybe I don't know you as well as I thought I did. Jessica's expression shifted to something colder than I'd ever seen from her. You know what, Tyler? Maybe you don't. Maybe you've been so focused on planning our perfect life together that you forgot I'm actually a person with my own thoughts and feelings and friendships. I'm not just an accessory to your life plan. That's not fair, and you know it. Is it? Is it because right now you're acting like I owe you every weekend? Every social commitment? Every piece of my emotional energy? That's not how healthy relationships work. I felt like I was in some alternate reality where up was down and down was up. Jessica, I'm talking about our engagement party, not some random weekend. Our engagement party that we planned together, that our families are traveling for, that's supposed to celebrate us deciding to build a life together. If you can't see why that should take priority over a bachelor party, then I honestly don't know what to say to you. Fine, she said, grabbing her phone and her purse from the coffee table. Then don't say anything. I'm going to stay at my sister's tonight because clearly we both need some space to think about what we actually want. And with that, she walked out of our apartment, leaving me sitting alone surrounded by engagement party planning materials and wondering how the world had just turned upside down in the span of 20 minutes. The next morning I woke up hoping it had all been some kind of stress-induced nightmare. But Jessica's side of the bed was still empty, and my phone had no messages from her. I tried calling around noon, but it went straight to voicemail. Texted asking if we could talk, but got no response. Friday evening, 24 hours before our engagement party, Jessica finally called. I answered on the first ring, hoping she'd come to her senses. Tyler, she said, and I could hear airport noise in the background. I'm at O'Hare. I'm going to Miami with Marcus and his friends. I've thought about it all day, and I think this is the right decision. Jessica, please don't do this. Come home, let's talk about this. I've already made up my mind. I'll be back Sunday night, and we can figure out how to reschedule the engagement party then. I'm sorry about the timing, but I need to do this. If you get on that plane, I said, my voice shaking, don't bother coming back. I'm not rescheduling our engagement party. I'm not pretending this is okay. If you choose Marcus's bachelor party over our engagement, then you're choosing to end us. There was a long pause. Tyler, you're being unreasonable. No, Jessica. I'm being clear about what I will and won't accept in a relationship. If you can't see why this is unacceptable, then we don't belong together. Fine, she said, and her voice had that same cold edge from the night before. I guess we'll see how you feel when I get back. Line went dead, and I knew she was really going to do it. I sat in our apartment, surrounded by engagement party decorations and catering confirmations, trying to figure out how I was going to tell 60 people that the bride-to-be had chosen a stranger's bachelor party over her own engagement celebration. Saturday morning arrived with the kind of crisp October air that should have made everything feel perfect for our engagement party. Instead, I woke up to complete silence and the crushing reality that in 12 hours, I would be standing alone, in front of everyone we knew, explaining why Jessica had chosen to be sipping cocktails in Miami instead of celebrating our future together. I spent the first hour just lying in bed, staring at the ceiling and trying to convince myself this was all some elaborate misunderstanding. Maybe Jessica would walk through the door any minute, laughing about how she'd caught an early flight. Back to surprise me? Maybe she'd realize what a terrible mistake she was making and call to say she was coming home. But my phone remained silent, and the empty space beside me felt like a chasm that kept growing wider. By 9 in the morning, I knew I had to start making phone calls. The caterers would be arriving at the venue in 3 hours to set up. The florist was probably already arranging centerpieces. Our families were likely getting dressed and preparing to drive or fly into Chicago for what they thought would be one of the happiest days of our lives. The first call I made was to my brother Jake in Portland. He answered on the second ring, his voice bright with excitement. "Tyler, big day, man. I just finished getting dressed and I'm heading to the airport in an hour. Are you freaking out?" I remember when I got engaged to Lisa, I couldn't eat anything for like 3 days before our engagement party. "Jake," I said, and immediately felt my throat tighten. "I need to tell you something, and it's going to sound completely insane." "What's wrong? Did something happen with the venue?" "The caterer, Jessica's not coming. She's in Miami at another guy's bachelor party instead." The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long that I wondered if the call had dropped. Finally, Jake spoke, his voice completely different. "I'm sorry, what did you just say?" I explained the entire situation. From Marcus's sudden appearance in our lives to Jessica's decision to prioritize his bachelor party over our engagement celebration. With each detail, I could hear Jake's breathing getting sharper, and by the time I finished, he was practically shouting. "Are you kidding me right now? She chose some random guy's bachelor party over your engagement party?" "Tyler, what the hell is wrong with her?" "I don't know," I said, and realized I was close to tears. "I honestly don't know. 6 weeks ago, everything was perfect between us. Now I feel like I don't even know who she is anymore." "Forget the party," Jake said immediately. "Cancel everything. Get your money back where you can. Let's figure out how to get you out of this relationship before you make the biggest mistake of your life." "I can't just cancel, Jake. Your flight lands in 4 hours. Jessica's parents are probably already on the road from Naperville. Our college friends, my coworkers, everyone from our office. 60 people are expecting to celebrate us tonight. Then we'll celebrate you being smart enough to dodge a bullet before you married someone who clearly doesn't respect you." Jake's words hit harder than I expected because deep down I knew he was right. But the thought of standing in front of everyone and admitting that my fiancé had abandoned me for another man's party felt like a humiliation I wasn't ready to face. The next call was to Jessica's parents, which somehow felt even worse. Her mother, Linda, answered, and I could hear the joy in her voice as she greeted me. "Tyler, sweetheart, we're just finishing breakfast and then we'll be on the road. I have to tell you, I barely slept last night because I'm so excited for tonight. Jessica is so lucky to have found someone who loves her the way you do." "Linda," I started, then had to stop and collect myself. "I need to tell you something about tonight, and I'm not sure how to say this." "Oh no, is Jessica sick?" She seemed a little stressed when we talked earlier this week, but I thought it was just normal pre-party jitters. "She's not sick. She's in Miami. She chose to go to a friend's bachelor party instead of coming to our engagement party." The silence from Linda was even more devastating than Jake's had been, because I could practically hear her heart breaking through the phone. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "What do you mean she's in Miami? Tyler, that can't be right. She would never miss your engagement party. There must be some kind of misunderstanding." I explained everything again, and with each detail, I could hear Linda's breathing becoming more labored. By the time I finished, she was crying. "I don't understand," she kept repeating. "I don't understand how my daughter could do something like this. Tyler, I am so sorry.
Nice.
I'm so embarrassed and heartbroken for you. This isn't the girl we raised. I know you're not responsible for her choices, Linda. I just wanted you to know before you drove all the way here." "We're still coming," she said firmly. "Even if Jessica isn't there, you're still family to us, and we want to support you through this. Maybe we can't have an engagement party, but we can at least be there for you." That conversation destroyed me in a way I hadn't expected, hearing Jessica's own mother express shock and disappointment at her behavior. Somehow made the betrayal feel even more real and devastating. The rest of the morning was a blur of phone calls to vendors, family members, and friends. Some people were understanding and supportive. Others were clearly skeptical about my version of events, probably wondering what I had done to drive Jessica away. A few of our mutual friends suggested that maybe I was overreacting, that Jessica probably just needed some space and would work things out when she got back. But the worst part was the social media updates that started appearing around noon. Jessica had posted photos from Miami Beach showing her in a bright yellow sundress, laughing and holding a cocktail while surrounded by Marcus and his bachelor party crew. The caption read, "Sometimes you just have to follow your heart and support the people who matter most. So grateful for friends who become family. The comments section was full of people from our social circle who clearly had no idea what was happening back in Chicago. You look amazing. Having the best time. Marcus is so lucky to have such a supportive friend. What it was the photo that appeared an hour later that really sent me over the edge. Jessica was dancing with Marcus at some beachfront bar, his arms around her waist, both of them laughing like they didn't have a care in the world. She looked happier than I'd seen her in months, more carefree and alive than she ever seemed when we were together. I screenshot the photo and sent it to Jake, who immediately called me back. Tyler, I'm looking at this photo right now, and I need you to listen to me very carefully. That is not how someone dances with a casual friend. That is not how someone looks when they're just being supportive. She's into this guy, and if you can't see that, you're lying to yourself. I can see it, I said quietly. I've been able to see it for weeks, but I kept telling myself I was being paranoid or jealous or insecure. But you're right. She's in love with him. So what are you going to do about it? Which was still decorated with engagement party planning materials and photos of Jessica and me from happier times. I thought about the venue that was probably being set. Up right now with flowers and lights and a beautiful space for celebrating. A love that apparently only existed in my imagination. I'm going to get dressed, I said finally. I'm going to go to our engagement party venue, and I'm going to face everyone who came to support us. I'm going to tell them the truth about what Jessica chose to do. And then I'm going to figure out how to rebuild my life without her. That's my brother, Jake said, and I could hear the pride in his voice. You deserve so much better than someone who would humiliate you like this. I spent the next hour getting ready, putting on the navy suit I'd bought specifically for this occasion, the one Jessica had helped me pick out during a shopping trip where we'd spent the whole afternoon laughing and planning our perfect evening. I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror and tried to see someone confident and strong, someone who could handle whatever the next few hours would bring. At 4 o'clock, I drove to Riverside Gardens, the venue where Jessica and I had our first date 3 years ago. The irony wasn't lost on me that the place where our love story began might also be where it ended. The caterers were busy setting up tables and arranging the flowers Jessica and I had selected together. Everything looked exactly as we'd planned. Except the guest of honor was 3 states away, dancing with another man. Linda and Frank, Jessica's parents, arrived. While I was standing in the main reception area, trying to figure out what exactly I was going to say to everyone, Linda immediately wrapped me in a hug and started crying again. Tyler, we tried calling her all afternoon. She's not answering our calls or texts. I don't know what's gotten into her, but please know that we're mortified by her behavior. You don't need to apologize for her, I said, but I appreciated their presence more than I could express. Yes, we do, Frank said, his voice tight with anger. We raised her to honor her commitments and treat people with respect. What she's doing to you is unacceptable, and she's going to hear about it when she gets home. By 6 o'clock, the venue was full of confused but supportive family and friends. Jake had made it from the airport and immediately appointed himself as my unofficial spokesperson, explaining the situation to anyone who asked where Jessica was. The reactions were mixed, ranging from shock and sympathy to awkward attempts to defend Jessica's choice. But it was around 7:30, right when the party should have been in full swing, that I received the text that changed everything. It wasn't from Jessica. It was from a number I didn't recognize. Tyler, this is Megan, Jessica's roommate from college. I'm at this bachelor party in Miami, and I think there are some things you need to know about what's really going on here. Can you call me? I stepped outside onto the venue's back patio and dialed Megan's number with shaking hands. Tyler, thank God you called, she said as soon as she answered. I'm here with my boyfriend Chris, who knows Marcus from work, and we had no idea that Jessica was supposed to be at your engagement party tonight until I saw your brother's Instagram story. What do you mean you had no idea? Jessica told everyone here that you two broke up last month. She's been introducing herself as single all weekend, and she and Marcus have been acting like a couple since we got here yesterday. Tyler, they shared a hotel room last night. The world seemed to tilt sideways, and I had to grab the patio railing to steady myself. She told people we broke up? Not just that we broke up. She said you were controlling and clingy, and that she realized she needed to be with someone who understood her free spirit. She's been trash-talking you to anyone who will listen. saying she's so much happier now that she's with someone who doesn't try to box her in. I felt like I was going to be sick. Megan, are you sure about this? Tyler, I'm looking at them right now. They're making out at the bar like teenagers. Everyone here thinks they're together, and Jessica is acting like the happiest woman alive. I'm so sorry to have to tell you this, but I thought you deserved to know the truth. I thanked Megan and hung up, then stood on that patio for several minutes, trying to process what I'd just learned. Jessica hadn't just chosen Marcus's bachelor party over our engagement. She'd chosen Marcus over me, period. She'd been living a double life, presenting herself as single to his friend group while still wearing my engagement ring and living in our apartment. When I walked back inside, Jake took one look at my face and immediately came over. What happened? You look like you've seen a ghost. I told him about Megan's call and watched his expression shift from concern to pure rage. She's been lying to everyone. She told them you broke up? Tyler, this isn't just about choosing a party over an engagement. This is about her having an affair and lying to everyone about it. I know, I said, and surprisingly, I felt calmer than I had all day. I know exactly what this is now. So what are you going to do? I looked around the room at all the people who had come to celebrate Jessica and me, people who had taken time out of their lives and spent money on travel and gifts to support what they thought was our happy future together. I thought about Jessica dancing with Marcus while telling his friends that I was a controlling ex-boyfriend. I thought about the 4 years I'd spent planning a life with someone who was apparently capable of betraying me without a second thought. I'm going to thank everyone for coming, I said finally. And then I'm going to go home and figure out how to move on from this. Because whatever Jessica and I had, it's over now. And I'm not going to waste another minute of my life on someone who could lie to me this easily. But as I prepared to address our guests, I had no idea that the most surprising part of this whole disaster was still to come. Standing in front of 60 confused guests, I took a deep breath and decided to tell everyone the truth. The murmur of conversations died down as I stepped up to the microphone that was supposed to be used for toasts celebrating Jessica and me. Thank you all for being here tonight, I began, my voice surprisingly steady. I know you came here expecting to celebrate an engagement, and I'm sorry that's not what's happening. Jessica made the choice to attend someone else's bachelor party in Miami instead of being here with us tonight. She's decided that a 6-week friendship is more important than our 4-year relationship and our engagement. The silence that followed was deafening. I could see shock, confusion, and sympathy rippling across the faces of our family and friends. Some people looked angry on my behalf. Others seemed to be processing whether they'd heard me correctly. I want you all to know how much it means to me that you're here, I continued. Your support and love haven't gone unnoticed, even if this evening didn't turn out the way any of us expected. Please enjoy the food and drinks. Know that your presence here means everything to me during what's obviously a difficult time. I stepped away from the microphone to a mixture of applause and concerned murmurs. People immediately started approaching me with words of support, awkward condolences, and questions about what had really happened. Jake stayed close by my side, fielding some of the more intrusive questions and making sure I wasn't overwhelmed by well-meaning but painful conversations. It was during this chaos that I noticed her, a woman sitting alone at one of the back tables. Someone I didn't immediately recognize, but who seemed familiar in a way that nagged at my memory. She was wearing a simple black dress, had shoulder-length auburn hair, and was watching the entire scene with an expression of quiet sympathy. When our eyes met across the room, she offered a small, sad smile that somehow felt more comforting than all the elaborate condolences I'd been receiving. Do you know who that woman is? I asked Jake, nodding toward her table. Jake looked over and shrugged. No idea. Maybe one of Jessica's work friends? There are a lot of people here I don't recognize. Before I could investigate further, Linda approached me with tears in her eyes. Tyler, honey, Frank and I are going to head home. This is just too heartbreaking for us to process right now. But I want you to know that no matter what happens between you and Jessica, you'll always be family to us. What she's done tonight is unforgivable, and she's lost something precious. I hugged Linda goodbye, feeling the weight of losing not just Jessica, but her entire family, People who had welcomed me with open arms and treated me like a son for 4 years. Watching them leave felt like another small death, another piece of the life I'd imagined for myself crumbling away. As the evening wound down and guests began to leave, I found myself gravitating toward the mysterious woman at the back table. She was still there, nursing what looked like a glass of wine and occasionally checking her phone. As I approached, she looked up with those same kind eyes that had caught my attention earlier. "I'm sorry," I said, feeling awkward but compelled to introduce myself. "I don't think we've met, but thank you for being here tonight. I'm Tyler." "I know who you are," she said with a gentle smile, standing up to shake my hand. "I'm Claire. I work with Jessica at Morrison Marketing." "You're one of Jessica's colleagues. I'm surprised she didn't mention you before. Did you two work together closely?" Claire's expression shifted slightly, and she seemed to be choosing her words carefully. "We work in the same building, but not really on the same projects." "I actually came tonight because I wanted to meet you, Tyler. Jessica talks about you at work sometimes." "Nothing too terrible, I hope," I said, attempting a joke despite everything. "Actually," Claire said, and there was something in her tone that made me pay closer attention. "That's part of why I wanted to talk to you. Tyler, I think there are some things you should know about how Jessica has been representing your relationship at the office." My stomach dropped. After Megan's call earlier, I wasn't sure I could handle any more revelations about Jessica's deceptions. "What do you mean?" Claire glanced around to make sure no one was listening, then gestured for me to sit down. "Tyler, Jessica has been telling people at work for the past month that she's not sure she wants to go through with the engagement. She's been saying that she feels trapped and that she's having second thoughts about settling down so young. She's 26 years old. We've been together for 4 years. It's hardly settling down young." No, and that's what made her comments so surprising to those of us who heard them. But Tyler, there's more. She's been very open about her attraction to Marcus. She talks about him constantly, brings him up in conversations that have nothing to do with him, and she's shown people photos of him that she has saved on her phone. I felt that familiar sinking sensation in my chest. What kind of photos? Photos from their coffee dates, pictures of him at work events that Jessica somehow managed to attend, selfies they've taken together. Tyler, she has an entire album of photos with Marcus on her phone, and she shows them to people like he's her boyfriend, not just a friend. "Did anyone at your office know about tonight? About our engagement party?" Claire nodded slowly. "That's the worst part. Jessica told several people that she was going to Miami this weekend instead of attending her own engagement party because she needed to figure some things out, and that being around Marcus helped her see what she really wanted in a relationship. The pieces were falling into place in the most devastating way possible. Jessica hadn't made an impulsive decision to choose Marcus's bachelor party over our engagement. She'd been planning this betrayal for weeks, possibly months, while living with me and pretending that everything was fine between us. "Claire, why are you telling me this? You barely know me." Claire was quiet for a moment, looking down at her hands. "Because I know what it's like to be lied to by someone you trust completely. My ex-husband had an affair for 8 months before I found out, and during that entire time, he was telling his friends and coworkers that our marriage was already over and that I was the one who wanted a divorce. The humiliation of discovering that everyone in his social circle knew about his affair while I was completely clueless was almost worse than the betrayal itself. I'm sorry that happened too. The thing is, Tyler, there were people who knew what was happening and could have told me earlier, but they didn't want to get involved, or they assumed I already knew. I promised myself that if I ever found myself in a situation where I could spare someone else that particular kind of pain, I would speak up." I looked at Claire more carefully, noting the genuine compassion in her expression and the way she seemed genuinely concerned for my well-being, despite barely knowing me. "Right. Is there anything else I should know?" Jessica requested Monday and Tuesday off work this week. She told our manager that she needed a few days to handle some personal matters after her weekend in Miami. "Tyler, I think she's planning to come back and ask you to take her back, but only after she's had her fun with Marcus." "Well, that's not going to happen," I said firmly. "After tonight, after everything I've learned about how she's been lying to everyone, there's no coming back from this." "Good," Claire said, and there was a fierceness in her voice that surprised me. "You deserve so much better than someone who would humiliate you like this. We sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, watching the catering staff clean up the remnants of what was supposed to be one of the happiest nights of my life. I found myself studying Claire's profile, noticing things I hadn't seen before. There was something familiar about her features, something that reminded me of someone from long ago, but I couldn't quite place it. "Claire, can I ask you something that might sound strange? Of course, have we met before? Before tonight? You seem familiar to me, but I can't figure out why." Claire turned to look at me directly, and something in her expression changed. There was a hint of nervousness, maybe even fear in her eyes. "Tyler, do you remember Lincoln Elementary School?" My breath caught. "You went to Lincoln Elementary?" I did. I was in Mrs. Patterson's 4th grade class, 2 doors down from Mr. Rodriguez's class? "That was my class," I said, my mind racing to place her. Claire Morrison. Claire Morrison is my married name. My divorce name now. Back then I was Claire Chen. The memory hit me like a freight train. Claire Chen, that quiet girl with braids who sat 2 seats behind me in math class. Claire Chen, who always had the right answers but was too shy to raise her hand. Claire Chen, who I'd walked home with occasionally because we lived in the same neighborhood, and who always thanked me for carrying her heavy backpack when she was struggling with it. "Oh my God, Claire, I can't believe it's you. You look so different." 15 years will do that to a person," she said with a laugh that sounded exactly like the shy giggle I remembered from 4th grade. "I can't believe you work with Jessica." "And I never knew. What are the odds?" Claire said, looking down at her hands again. "It's not entirely a coincidence that I work at Morrison Marketing. When I moved back to Chicago after my divorce, I was looking for a job in marketing. I saw that Morrison had an opening, and when I researched the company, I saw Jessica's name on the employee directory. I remembered her from elementary school, too, and I knew she was dating you because she posted about it on social media. I thought it might be nice to reconnect with people from the old neighborhood." "So you took the job partly because you knew Jessica worked there?" "Partly, yes, but mostly because it was a good opportunity. I have a master's degree in marketing from University of Chicago, and Morrison has an excellent reputation. Running into Jessica was just a bonus, or at least I thought it would be." "What do you mean?" Claire hesitated, clearly debating how much to tell me. "Tyler, Jessica remembered me from elementary school too, but not in a good way. She made it very clear from my first day that she wasn't interested in being friends or acknowledging our shared history. She was actually pretty hostile toward me, and it took me a while to understand why. That doesn't sound like Jessica. She's usually very friendly with coworkers. I think it's because she remembered that you and I used to walk home together. Sometimes." She mentioned it once, in a way that made it clear she saw me as some kind of threat, even though we were literally 10 years old, and it was completely innocent. I stared at Claire, trying to process this information. Jessica was jealous of our childhood friendship. It seems that way. She made several comments about how I shouldn't expect any special treatment just because I knew her boyfriend in elementary school. It was honestly pretty uncomfortable, which is why I kept my distance and never mentioned to you that we worked together. Claire, I had no idea. If I had known you were working with Jessica, I would have loved to catch up and hear about what you've been up to all these years. I know you would have. You were always kind, Tyler, even as a kid. That's actually why watching Jessica treat you this way has been so hard for me to witness." I looked at Claire Chen Morrison, this woman who had been part of my childhood and had somehow reappeared in my life on the worst night I'd experienced in years. There was something surreal about the timing, something that felt almost like fate. "Claire, would you like to get coffee sometime? After I figure out this mess with Jessica and get my life back together, I'd love to hear about everything you've been up to since elementary school." Claire smiled, and it was the first genuinely happy expression I'd seen on anyone's face all day. "I'd like that very much, Tyler, but only when you're ready. Take all the time you need to process everything that's happened." As we exchanged phone numbers and prepared to leave the venue, I couldn't help but think about the strange way life had unfolded. Jessica, who I'd thought was my future, had betrayed me in the most public and humiliating way possible. The wreckage of that betrayal, I'd reconnected with someone from my past who had shown me more genuine kindness and concern in one evening than Jessica had shown me in months. Walking to our cars, Claire turned to me one more time. "Tyler, I know tonight has been awful, but I want you to know something. Jessica is making a huge mistake. You're one of the good ones, and someday you're going to find someone who recognizes that and treats you accordingly." Driving home alone to the apartment I shared with Jessica, I found myself thinking not about the devastation of the day, but about the unexpected gift of reconnecting with Claire. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt a tiny spark of hope that maybe, eventually, things might actually work out better than I could have imagined. Sunday evening came with the dreaded sound of Jessica's key turning in our apartment door. I was sitting on the couch, having spent the entire weekend packing her belongings into boxes and preparing for this confrontation. I'd had 48 hours to process everything, to move from shock and heartbreak into something that felt more like cold determination. Jessica walked in with her suitcase, looking tanned and relaxed, like she'd just returned from a perfectly normal vacation. She was wearing a flowing white sundress that I'd never seen before. Her hair was lighter from the sun, and she had this glow about her that made it obvious she'd had an amazing time while destroying our relationship. "Hey," she said casually, as if she'd just come back from a work conference instead of abandoning our engagement party for another man. "How was your weekend?" I stared at her, genuinely amazed by her audacity. "How was my weekend? Jessica, you missed our engagement party to go to Miami with Marcus. How do you think my weekend was?" She rolled her eyes and kicked off her sandals. "Tyler, don't be so dramatic. I told you we could reschedule the party. It's not like the world ended because I had to support a friend during an important time in his life. A friend you've known for 6 weeks. Duration doesn't determine the depth of a friendship, Tyler. I've told you that before." I stood up and gestured toward the boxes I'd packed. "Well, it doesn't matter now, because I've packed your things. I want you out of this apartment and out of my life." For the first time since she'd walked in, Jessica looked genuinely surprised. "What are you talking about?" "Tyler, you're being ridiculous. I went to a bachelor party, not to Vegas to elope. With someone else? I know exactly what you did in Miami, Jessica. I know you told everyone there that we broke up last month. I know you and Marcus shared a hotel room. I know you've been trash-talking me to his friends and presenting yourself as single." Jessica's face went pale, and for a moment, she looked genuinely scared. "Who told you that? Does it matter? The point is that I know the truth. You didn't just choose Marcus's bachelor party over our engagement. You chose Marcus over me, period. You've been having an emotional affair for weeks, possibly months, and lying to everyone about it." "That's not true," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Marcus and I are just friends. Yes, we shared a room, but nothing happened. Just talked and hung out with the group. Stop lying to me, Jessica. I'm done with the lies. I know about the photos you've been showing people. At work, I know you told your colleagues you weren't sure about our engagement. I know you requested time off this week to handle personal matters after your weekend with Marcus." Jessica's expression shifted from defensive to angry. "Who the hell have you been talking to? Someone from my office?" "Tyler, that's completely inappropriate. You had no right to involve my coworkers in our personal business. Didn't involve anyone." Someone who cares about basic human decency decided to tell me the truth because they felt bad watching me get humiliated while being completely clueless about what was really happening. Well, whoever it was needs to mind their own business. And you need to stop being so paranoid and possessive. I'm allowed to have friendships, and I'm allowed to have private conversations at work without reporting every detail to you." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Private conversations about how you don't want to marry me and how you're attracted to someone else. Jessica, that's not friendship. That's planning your exit strategy while keeping me as your backup. Plan? You're being completely unreasonable. No, I'm being completely done. I want you out of this apartment tonight. Take your boxes and go stay with your sister or your parents or Marcus. I don't care where, but you're not staying here. Jessica's anger flared into something I'd rarely seen from her. "You can't just kick me out, Tyler. This is my apartment too. My name is on the lease. Actually, it's not. The lease is in my name only because you said you wanted to focus on saving money for the wedding instead of paying rent. So yes, I can absolutely ask you to leave. This is insane. Tyler, I made one mistake. I chose badly about the timing. Of one weekend, it doesn't mean our entire relationship is over. One mistake. Jessica, you've been lying to me for weeks. You've been emotionally cheating with Marcus while wearing my engagement ring and sleeping in our bed. You humiliated me in front of everyone we know, and then you spent the weekend pretending to be single while trash-talking me to strangers? That's not one mistake. That's a complete betrayal of everything we built together. I never cheated. On you? Maybe not physically, but emotionally? Absolutely. The Jessica I fell in love with would never have done any of this. She would never have abandoned me at the most important moment of our relationship for someone she barely knew. Would never have lied to me about her feelings or made me look like a fool in front of our family and friends. Jessica was quiet for a long moment, and I could see her calculating, trying to figure out how to salvage this situation. When she spoke again, her voice was softer, more manipulative. Tyler, I know I hurt you, and I'm sorry about that. Don't you think you're overreacting a little bit? I mean, we've been together for 4 years. We've built a life together. Are you really willing to throw all of that away because of one weekend? I'm not throwing anything away, Jessica. You already threw it away when you chose Marcus over me. I'm just accepting reality. What if I promised to cut contact with Marcus? What if I agreed to never see him again? It's too late for that. The damage is done. I'll never be able to trust you again, and I'll never be able to forget the way you made me feel this weekend. Every time you're late coming home from work, every time you get a text from a male coworker, every time you want to go out with friends, I'll wonder if you're lying to me again. That's not fair. Fair. Jessica, what's not fair is spending 4 years of my life with someone who is capable of betraying me this completely and then acting like it's no big deal. What's not fair is finding out that the woman I wanted to marry was showing photos of another man to her coworkers like he was her boyfriend. Jessica tried a different approach, moving closer to me with tears starting to form in her eyes. Tyler, please. I love you. I know I made terrible choices this weekend, but I love you, and I want to marry you. Can't we work through this? If you loved me, you never would have done this in the first place. People make mistakes when they're confused or scared. I've been feeling overwhelmed by all the wedding planning and the pressure of making such a big commitment. Maybe I just needed to feel free for a weekend before settling down. By pretending to be single and sharing a hotel room with another man, nothing happened with Marcus. I don't believe you, and even if it's true, it doesn't matter. The fact that you put yourself in that situation while engaged to me tells me everything. I need to know about how you really feel about our relationship. Jessica's tears were flowing freely now, but they felt calculated rather than genuine. Tyler, you're making a huge mistake. We're good together. We understand each other. We have history and shared dreams, and a whole life planned out. We had shared dreams. But apparently your dreams changed when Marcus showed up, and you didn't bother to include me in that conversation. I was confused. I didn't know how to talk to you about what I was feeling, so instead of talking to me, you decided to explore those feelings with Marcus while lying to me about it. Jessica, that's not confusion. That's selfishness and cowardice. The tears stopped, and Jessica's expression hardened again. Fine. You want to be stubborn and dramatic about this? Go ahead. But don't come crawling back to me when you realize you've made the biggest mistake of your life. Don't. You think you're going to find someone better than me? Good luck with that. You're not exactly a catch, Tyler. You're boring and predictable, and you have no sense of adventure. Maybe you're right, I said calmly. Maybe I am boring and predictable, but at least I'm honest. At least when I make a commitment to someone, I honor it. At least I don't lie to people I claim to love. You're going to regret this. The only thing I regret is wasting 4 years on someone who was never really committed to me in the first place. Jessica grabbed 2 of the boxes I'd packed and headed toward the door. I'll be back for the rest of my stuff later this week. I'll leave it with the building manager. I want to see you again. She paused at the door and turned back to me one last time. Tyler, last chance. Are you sure you want to do this? Are you sure you want to throw away 4 years over one bad weekend? I'm sure. After she left, I sat in the sudden silence of our apartment, which no longer felt like our apartment, but just mine. For the first time in days, I felt like I could breathe properly. The constant tension and anxiety that had been building for weeks was gone, replaced by a strange sense of peace. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found Claire's number. We'd been texting occasionally. Since Saturday night, just friendly check-ins and her asking how I was holding up. I'd told her about my plan to end things with Jessica, and she'd been supportive without being pushy or inappropriate. "Hey Claire," I typed. "It's over. Jessica and I are done. She moved out tonight." Her response came quickly. "I'm sorry you had to go through that, but I think you made the right choice." "How are you feeling?" "Relieved, mostly. Also terrified about starting over, but relieved." "Want to grab that coffee we talked about? I'm free tomorrow evening if you're up for it." I looked around the apartment, which felt both empty and full of possibilities at the same time. For the first time in weeks, I felt genuinely excited about something. "I'd love that. Let's do it." As I got ready for bed that night, I thought about how drastically my life had changed in just one weekend. On Friday, I'd been engaged to someone I thought I'd spend my life with. By Sunday, I was single and reconnecting with someone from my childhood who had shown me more genuine care and honesty in 3 days than Jessica had shown me in months. I didn't know what would happen with Claire, if anything, but for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt hopeful about the future. I felt like maybe losing Jessica wasn't the end of my story, but the beginning of a better chapter that I couldn't have imagined while I was trapped in a relationship with someone who didn't truly value me. The next morning, I woke up in my own apartment, in my own bed, with no one to answer to and no one lying to me. It felt like freedom. 2 months later, I was sitting across from Claire at a cozy Italian restaurant in Lincoln Park, celebrating her promotion to senior marketing director at Morrison. It was our 8th official date, though we'd been spending time together. Almost every day since that first coffee meeting where we'd talked for 4 hours straight about everything from our childhood memories to our career aspirations. I can't believe how different my life is now," I said, reaching across the table to take her hand. 2 months ago, I thought my life was falling apart. Now I feel like everything is finally falling into place. Claire smiled and squeezed my hand. Sometimes the worst things that happen to us end up being the best things that could have happened. If Jessica hadn't shown her true colors, you might have married her and been miserable for years. She might have done something like this after we were married and had kids together. At least this way I found out who she really was before. It was too late to walk away cleanly. "Exactly," Gus said, with a mischievous grin. "If she hadn't been so horrible, we might never have reconnected." It was true. Over the past 2 months, Claire and I had fallen into the most natural, comfortable relationship I'd ever experienced. There was no drama, no games, no wondering where I stood or whether she was being honest with me. She was straightforward about her feelings, supportive of my goals, and genuinely interested in building something real together. The contrast with my relationship with Jessica was so stark that I sometimes wondered how I'd ever thought what Jessica and I had was love. "Speaking of Jessica," Claire said carefully, "I heard something at work today that I thought you should know about." "What happened?" "She got fired." I nearly choked on my wine. "When? Why?" "Apparently, she's been having attendance issues ever since she got back from Miami. She's been calling in sick constantly, showing up late, and when she is there, she's been completely distracted and unfocused. But the final straw was when she got caught using company resources to plan personal events." Personal events? She was using the office printer and supplies to make invitations for some kind of party she was throwing for Marcus. Manager confronted her about it. Jessica apparently lost it and started screaming about how the company didn't appreciate her contributions and how everyone was against her. I shook my head, trying to process this information. That doesn't sound like the Jessica I knew at all. I think losing you really messed with her head. Tyler. She's been acting erratic and desperate ever since she realized you weren't going to take her back. Several people at the office mentioned that she seemed to be spiraling. What about Marcus? Are they still together? Claire's expression shifted to something that looked almost like pity. That's the other thing I heard. Italy Marcus went back to Texas right after the bachelor party and got married to his fiancée Sarah, as planned. Jessica kept posting on social media like they were still in contact. But someone who knows Marcus's friend group said he blocked her on everything because she was being obsessive and wouldn't accept that their weekend was just a fling for him. The irony was almost too much to believe. Jessica had destroyed our 4-year a relationship in her career for a man who had used her for one weekend and then discarded her completely. I should feel vindicated, I said, but honestly, I just feel sad for her. She threw away everything real in her life for something that was never real at all. That's because you're a good person, Tyler. Even after everything she did to you, you don't want to see her suffer. I don't want to see anyone suffer. But I also don't feel any desire to rescue her or fix her problems. That's not my responsibility anymore. Good. That shows how much you've grown over the past 2 months. It was true. The Tyler who had been engaged to Jessica might have felt guilty or obligated to help her through this crisis. But I'd learned that you can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved, and more importantly, you shouldn't set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm. 3 weeks later, Claire and I were walking through the same neighborhood where we'd grown up, pointing out houses where our childhood friends had lived and reminiscing about elementary school adventures. We'd decided to take a weekend trip back to our hometown to visit our parents, who were all thrilled that we'd reconnected. You know what's funny? Claire said, as we passed the corner where we used to wait for the school bus. I had the biggest crush on you in 4th grade. Really? I had no idea. I was way too shy to ever say anything. Plus, you seemed so focused on Jessica, even back then. She was always so confident and outgoing. Everything I wasn't. Jessica was my friend, but Claire, if I had known you were interested, things might have been very different. You were always the one I felt most comfortable talking to. You were kind and thoughtful, and you actually listened when I spoke. Maybe we needed to go through all this other stuff to end up where we are now. Maybe we both needed to grow up and have some other experiences before we were ready for each other. I stopped walking and turned to face her. Claire, I need to tell you something. What? I'm falling in love with you. Actually, I think I've already fallen. These past 3 months have been the happiest I've ever been. And it's because of you. Claire's face lit up with the most beautiful smile I'd ever seen. Tyler, I'm already completely in love with you. I have been since that second week when you called me at midnight because you couldn't sleep and just wanted to hear my voice. Didn't you say anything? Because I wanted to make sure you were ready. I wanted to make sure you'd fully processed everything with Jessica and that your feelings for me weren't just rebound emotions. They're not. Claire, you're not my rebound. You're my real thing. 6 months later, we were back at Riverside Gardens, the same venue where my engagement party disaster had taken place. But this time we were there for Claire's company holiday party. And instead of facing humiliation and betrayal, I was surrounded by people who respected both of us and genuinely celebrated our relationship. It's funny being back here, I said, as we danced to the same band that had played during my failed engagement party. Any regrets? Claire asked, looking up at me with those same kind eyes that had caught my attention that terrible night. Only that it took us so long to find our way back to each other. Well, we found each other eventually. That's what matters. As we swayed to the music, I caught a glimpse of someone familiar near the bar. It was Jake, who had become one of Claire's biggest supporters and frequently joked about how I'd finally found someone who was actually good enough for me. Tyler, he said when the song ended, I just wanted to tell you both how happy I am for you. Claire, you've been the best thing that's happened to my brother in years. Thank you, Jake. That means a lot coming from you. I'm serious. After watching what Jessica put him through, seeing him with someone who actually appreciates him is amazing. You two are perfect together. Later that evening, as Claire and I walked to our car, I reflected on how dramatically my life had changed. A year ago, I'd been planning a future with someone who didn't truly value me, someone who was capable of betraying me without hesitation. Now, I was with someone who had been there during my worst moment, who had helped me rebuild my confidence and self-worth, and who loved me for exactly who I was. Claire, I said as I opened her car door, thank you. For what? For being honest with me that night when you could have just minded your own business? For being patient with me while I figured out how to trust again? For loving me the way I always hoped someone would. Tyler, you don't need to thank me for loving you. That's the easy part. You're the best man I know, and I'm the lucky one. Driving home together, I thought about how sometimes the worst betrayals lead to the greatest blessings. If Jessica hadn't chosen Marcus over me, I might never have discovered what real love actually felt like. I might have spent years in a relationship that looked good on the surface but was hollow underneath. Instead, I'd found someone who had been part of my story all along, someone who saw me clearly and chose me anyway. Someone who knew the difference between infatuation and love, between selfish desire and genuine commitment. As we pulled into our driveway of the house we'd bought together just last month, I realized that Jessica had actually done me the biggest favor of my life. She'd set me free to find the person I was truly meant to be with. Next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.